Okay. Well, as industries increase in complexity and operations are becoming more and more global, the need for a high level of compliance is more critical. One of the problems, though, has been the question of how to frame all the various aspects of compliance. I mean, you can have environmental compliance, you can have social responsibility, you can have regulatory compliance, quality management system compliance, and so forth. So what is the common element that ties all of these things together? Well, we believe, and more you're hearing more and more about this, it's risk. What is the risk of non-compliance to anything? So here to talk about that is Morgan Palmer, Chief Technology Officer for ETQ. Hello, Morgan.
Hi, Dirk.
So do I have that right? Risk is the framework by which we can look at all compliance issues. I mean, it really can be used to kind of pull everything together?
Yes, that's correct. It used to be that we talked about compliance as a black and white thing. Either something was compliant or not compliant. It was conforming or not conforming. Audits were used to check on compliance. But nowadays, with the complexity of the marketplace, the complexity of organizations, the complexity of the production process, we talk about levels of compliance. And coming up with those levels is where risk management fits in. Risk management and risk assessment are tools that have been around for a long time to define a level of risk that can be applied very effectively to compliance in any area of your operations.
Now, it's interesting. You mentioned levels of compliance. I guess I've never heard anybody talk about that before. I mean, I would think you're either in compliance
or black or white.
Yes,
yes
black or
no.
white.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
you're in compliance or not. So, I mean, what do you mean by levels of compliance?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I mean by that is people are now trying to achieve an acceptable level of compliance. So you can overachieve on compliance, and people do all the time. They put too many controls in place, too much investment in all areas of their operations, and they achieve a level of compliance that is actually too much. That's why compliance has often got a bad name in terms of being a cost center that's out of control. So instead of that, if you try and achieve an acceptable level of compliance and measure all of the different aspects of your operations with risk management and risk assessment to try and understand at what level of compliance are you, what levels of risks do you have in your operations that dictate that level of compliance, you can apply a much more efficient and effective control to achieve compliance.
Okay, so you mentioned something here that it used to be, well, it still is sometimes, you know, people talk about quality or quality control or quality management being a cost center, you know, which is, you know, a bad term, right? Oh man, we're spending so much money on quality or quality control as if there's no payoff on it. And now you're saying the same issue is happening with compliance, and that the idea of compliance is becoming a cost center. How do you move away from that? I mean, is it just a matter of somehow identifying where you need to spend your resources in terms of risk and compliance?
It is. What's very interesting about risk management and risk assessment, which is part of risk management, is that it provides a language that is common to pretty much all your operations. And it's a language that senior management understands. So if you go to your senior management with the language of risk, saying that something is maybe part of your operation is at an unacceptable level of risk, and you need to apply a certain investment, a certain cost to bring yourself up to a newer, higher level of compliance to mitigate that risk, they'll understand that. And they'll also understand that you're not just trying to blanket the organization with too much compliance, if you will, but that you're taking a measured approach based on the risk assessment and the risk management process that you've applied. So in other words, we believe that risk is a way of more effectively and more efficiently and more cost effectively doing compliance, and it's a way that senior management will understand.
Yeah, it's interesting, Morgan, because we just did a story last week from our own Ryan Day talking about over-delivering on quality, and this very
tie in, right?
Yeah, very similar issue as you're talking, Morgan. But my question to you really is so how do you have those conversations? You know, I mean, gosh, you know, we all come out of an attitude of wanting to be, you know, over-deliver everything, quality, compliance, everything. So how do you frame the conversation with management where you say, well, listen, this is, I mean, you're not going to say good enough, but we are compliant, we don't need to go beyond that. How do they understand that risk needs to be coordinated and it needs to be understood in that framework?
Well, it's pretty difficult. Really, you have to understand that risk assessment, risk management has to be a top-down initiative. There has to be an increase in awareness in the organization that doing risk assessment and talking about levels of compliance is acceptable. It can't really come from the quality manager. It has to come from the top. So there has to be an education on risk management, on risk assessment, on the tools, the techniques, and the impact of that on compliance and on quality all around the organization. However, having said that, senior management is very receptive to that type of education. They're already talking about risk when it comes to financial operations, when it comes to regulatory compliance. They're familiar with the term, they're familiar with the concepts, they understand the benefit. Often the compliance standards in all different areas, whether it's safety, quality, and environmental, are talking about risk directly. So they understand the language of risk, and they will be open to education throughout the organization to make sure that everyone's talking that language.
Okay, well, Morgan, we got to wrap it up here, but I do want to let everybody know that we're going to get more in depth on this topic, risk management, what it means, how to do it, why it should not become a cost center, and how it can actually be very important for your business. In a webinar coming up next week, next Tuesday, 11 o'clock Pacific. I believe there's a link underneath the player page out there if you want to go ahead and click on that and sign up for this webinar. Morgan's going to be the speaker on there. So, Morgan, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so long.
Thanks, Morgan. We'll see you on Tuesday. Yeah, check that one out, Doc. You're hosting it with Morgan. Morgan's presenting. You're going to be hosting. And, you know, risk, we talked about that.
It's a hot topic right now.
It is. And there's good reason for it. I mean, it certainly... You know, it certainly is and there you can see right there the more information about the webinar. Yeah, something that really we hear a lot from our users. And you know, risk is really ending up to be a function of quality. And people that are quality managers who have grown up in quality in their organizations are being asked to assume the responsibility for risk as we go. So, you know, if you're doing that, if you're in that position, check out the webinar. I think you'll get a good deep dive in that from Morgan and Dirk on Tuesday the 30th.
Absolutely.
All right.